Hey everyone, it's Mary Brownlee, licensed professional counselor and trauma therapist. Today we're going to talk a little bit about what healing should look like when you come in to see a therapist and you're dealing with complex trauma. A lot of my clients, they sit down for the first time and they're like, I don't know what to expect. What does healing look like? What's realistic for me based on my experiences? Is there hope still? And they would love a roadmap. Like if we could just give them a roadmap so they could better understand themselves and what the healing process looks like, that would make them super happy. So I get this enough of, over the years, for example, that I think it would be helpful to make a video on this because every time I explain to them what the roadmap looks like, they usually are quite relieved and go, okay, that's doable. I can do that. So this video is for those of you who also might be out there going, oh my gosh, is there a roadmap to healing? What does it look like? Is it realistic? Is it possible? This video will be really helpful for you. So sit down. I hope you enjoy. Feel free to like and subscribe if you would like more content like this. And I really appreciate all of you. All right, what I usually like to tell my clients when they're sitting down for the first time in front of me is to assure them that there are answers for the way that they feel. I like to normalize trauma right from the very start in terms of what it looks like, what it feels like, that it's totally normal for our bodies to respond in the ways they have, considering the fact that we have been traumatized. I myself am a trauma survivor, so a lot of this I know on an inside level as well as the professional knowledge, but I usually like to give them a language to start describing their symptoms. So, for example, I would like to normalize, those of us, for example, who come in not knowing who we are from our complex trauma, those layers of childhood abuse and neglect, struggling with low self-worth, not having a good sense of direction in life, a sense of purpose and meaning and why you're even here on this planet has been completely altered from complex trauma. And they're just feeling really lost. And oftentimes also having a high degree of hypervigilance and like nightmares and anxiety and depression symptoms. And they're just feeling like they're a hot mess. So they come in, they sit down and they're like, I don't even know where to start. I'm a hot mess right now. So I love to just kind of go right in there and let's understand trauma from just a biological perspective and a neurological perspective. Like, what is the brain doing? What is the body doing? And just normalize that what happened to them was not normal, that it would be absolutely human to respond in the ways that they have and to take the shame out of trauma and what it does to them. It's completely normal as a trauma survivor to feel low self-worth, to lack a strong sense of identity, to struggle with poor boundaries, to have like massive people-pleasing parts or massive parts that struggle with anger, to struggle with like themes of injustice and trusting people, to not feel safe in the world, to struggle with a sense of purpose and meaning and like God and the afterlife and any type of spiritual dynamics have been destroyed. So all of this is completely normal. So I like to just take the fear out of how they're feeling right away by reducing shame, giving them a sense of like normalization and ground underneath their feet again. That's kind of step one. Step one in the roadmap. Let's just normalize that the crap has happened and that the reactions that you're having in your body and your mind and your heart, totally common when trauma's on board. So that's kind of step one, at least, of how I like to approach it. Step two usually is helping them navigate their specific story and how their specific story has impacted them. I want my clients to share the narrative, the storyline of their trauma and what has happened to them. Because for the first time, usually it's for the first time, they're sharing a story of how they came to be in the present moment. And they're feeling so lost. And oftentimes there's a lot of self-blame and they're struggling with a lot of shame and feeling so different and that something's wrong with them. So as they share their narrative, a lot of times I'm normalizing their emotions as they're sharing it. I'm empathizing with them if they went through incredibly terrible experiences. And for the first time, again, this is the first time they've actually had somebody who validated them and who cared about how they felt and what they thought. So if you're a complex trauma survivor, it's very likely that in your dysfunctional family of origin, you'd never had anybody validating you or caring about your thoughts and feelings and your needs. So some of therapy is in a way like reparenting. The therapist is kind of the stand-in for this healthy, nurturing adult figure figure that actually genuinely cares, good therapist at least, and this can be a corrective experience for a person to start to see themselves accurately. What I always teach all my clients is the way you see yourself is inaccurate. You're seeing yourself through the lens of your dysfunctional family's eyeballs, so to speak. And that is based on very distorted perceptions and beliefs and all of that they have from their own trauma and their own histories. It's not actually a healthy person's view of you. You know, a healthy person has the ability to see you accurately with kindness and compassion, to not judge you harshly, and to care about how you feel and think. So a therapist begins to start to mirror the client in a way that is deeply healing, because for the first time they're being seen for who they are and truly cared about for who they are. That's deeply, deeply impactful to us as trauma survivors. Gives us hope that other people will also be able to deeply see us and hear us and validate us and care about us, that there's hope. Oh my gosh, here's at least one person that really sees me and knows who I am and validates me and cares about me. So that's really important for us too in our healing journey. And then, you know, kind of a third step, I think, is we begin to dig into like different parts. So if any of you are already on board and one of my prior subscribers, you probably know that I use internal family systems therapy, or IFS. This is really parts work. I have lots of good videos throughout my channel about IFS. Feel free to check them out if you're interested in this model. But IFS really it talks about how all of us have like an authentic self that we're born with. And throughout our lives, when we go through trauma and dysfunctional childhoods, the authentic part of us is split off from who we, you know, the parts develop essentially to keep us safe and are split off from who we really are. So what that might look like, especially with complex trauma, you're going to have clients, for example, they have parts that overthink, right? So overthinking parts that are constantly like on a state of fight or flight and always hypervigilant, that are like looking and scanning, you know, for danger everywhere they go. And it's hard for them to relax, really, because life has been dangerous. Or you might have parts that are like people-pleasing parts that learned they could stay safe by keeping everyone else around them happy. Or you have parts that struggle with a high degree of anger, you know, fight, flight, freeze. So this is the fight part that's when backed into a corner, it's going to erupt with a huge volcanic rage to keep itself safe. So these are just a few parts. You might have substance abusing parts are common with my traumatized clients. You know, depressed parts, very, very common. Anxious parts, very, very common. So there's many parts. I have, again, great videos on a lot of the parts that a lot of us get from complex trauma. So we start really examining the way their trauma has changed who they are and been an adaptive strategy to change who they are as well, to stay safe. So I always teach them no part is a bad part. Every part was just trying to help you stay safe. So that's really important too, because it begins to build an awareness of the different parts that they have, why the parts do what they do, and compassion for these parts that we're just trying to keep them safe. They're not bad, like even depression, for example, or even substance abuse. They're not bad on the surface. These were just parts that helped you adapt and survive in the only way you knew how as a young child undergoing incredible traumatic experiences. So the introduction of this beautiful sense of self-compassion begins to enter the picture, and some clarity to be able to see themselves more accurately. Again, they're starting to see themselves with more gentle and loving and compassionate eyes instead of those I get that lens from the abusive family where, you know, they're not seeing themselves accurately when they first come in. So as they begin to deeply understand themselves and compassion begins to build, finally you see this real spark start to come alive, and people go, oh my goodness, you know, there is hope here. I'm starting to see that my parts actually are not trying to work against me, that they're willing to step back and do other jobs and roles as long as my authentic self is leading. And if they feel safe with me, they'll calm down and not cause so much distress. And they begin to feel more whole and more connected and more at peace and more at ease with who they are. And this is really when we get to a wonderful stage of healing where we even begin to explore things like purpose and meaning, and like why they're even here on this planet, and how trauma has altered and changed their sense of who they are and why they're here. And some of those justice concepts of like, how do you deal with life being so unfair? and grief and loss as well. You know, we grieve so much as trauma survivors, from the loss of the parent we wish we could have had, you know, to the loss of a safe childhood, loss of ourselves. You know, there's so many different layers of grief and loss that we're also going through as a trauma survivor. So that gets honored and explored as well in session. And oftentimes in the later stages of healing, not only are they getting a strong sense of self back, a sense of self-compassion, love for themselves, but they're beginning to also be able to get to the stage of acceptance about what has occurred. And they're not so angry anymore, for example. They've been able to kind of let the anger naturally progresses and gets let go of towards the end. And acceptance enters the picture of like, this wasn't my fault. I did the best I could. I deserve better, and I'm allowed to protect myself from now on. So this beautiful energy of being able to set boundaries, to recognize their worth and value as a human being, that begins to get born. So as you see, there's a progression really from very much self-blame to understanding of self, releasing shame, releasing self-blame, and then finally some beautiful strength begins to get built in of like, hey, I am worth being loved and I am worth being safe, and I'm not going to put up with people who abuse me anymore. And I have the right to stay safe, actually. So it really comes full circle that by the end, and they're ready to graduate therapy, self-love has been fixed, identity has been fixed, recognizing that they're allowed to set boundaries and say no and protect themselves has been fixed, and purpose and meaning has been fixed. And really, that is what healing looks like in a nutshell, is that you as a human being can go through life now safe, loving yourself with a sense of purpose and meaning, and being able to thrive as a human being in a way that you really always deserved. So I hope that this helps, this little roadmap that I've been able to explain today. My channel scattered throughout is a lot of these different areas that we've touched upon, and feel free to drop any comments below if you have any questions or would like to add anything that you feel is important of this topic that was important to you also as a trauma survivor. And if you have any ideas for future videos, I'm always happy to touch upon any of your questions in future videos as well. So take care, everybody. It's been a pleasure, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye-bye.